so maybe we can get started for today. So today what I will do is basically try to derive what the form of the wave that travels from our brain to our muscles is. So I'm going to look again at the voltage, but as a function of not only time, but also space, right? This is what we started doing last time, but I didn't finish it. So we had these two main equations, and we said that we want to look at the traveling wave solution. So I wrote V and W as variables of xi, and then xi was this, where c is denoting the wave speed. And we chose this convention that c is basically positive, so this shows that you will have at the end a wave that travels from right to left. And we have that this parameter epsilon that comes from the non-dimensionalization is very small, so this will allow us now to make some progress. And last time I was mentioning also that I will draw some phase planes, right? But because we're working with a 3D version now, where the phase plane analysis will be for V, W, and V prime, we need to simplify things a bit. So we will be looking at 2D slices in this 3D space. Okay, so I will, point one we started last time, but I will remind you what I started talking about, and then we will do the whole thing. So first I said that if we are not on the curve, if we aren't on the curve W is equal to f of V, then there is some fast phase that we will quickly move to this. Then we quickly move there, and the way you see this from equation 1. So if I look at the first, I have epsilon c v prime. This is the fast motion. This is some higher order correction. And basically, this is something that is non-zero. So things happen over some fast scale xi. And last time I also wrote that xi can then be written as epsilon zeta, where zeta is some other parameter. So I'm going to let xi is equal to epsilon zeta. So once you do that, then equation 1 there becomes the following. So 1 becomes c dv d zeta is f of v minus the w, and then I have also something from there, but I will have epsilon squared divided by epsilon squared, so I'm going to get plus d squared v dz squared. And I name this equation 1 prime. So now we also have equation number 2, which is that one. So considering equation 2, we can have basically c. Again, I will make this replacement over here. So I'm going to get this is equal to gamma v minus w but times epsilon. So this implies basically that if epsilon is really small, w is a constant. And I mentioned during the last lecture that w will be 0, but someone asked me after, so I will just tell you again why w will be 0. So here we chose coordinates from the non-dimensionalization such that the resting case corresponds to when I have basically v and w at 0. So it's some shifted coordinate system. Remember, v was capital V minus V equilibrium, right? Divided by V sodium minus V equilibrium. So if capital V approaches the equilibrium V, you're going to get V equals to 0 in this rescaled coordinate system. That's why I have 0, 0 there. So if I have that W is equal to W constant, some constant number, and I start at that point, I'm going to have that this is just 0. So this is saying that if we are on the slow variable, W, and it hasn't moved yet, it's going to equal its resting value. Okay, so that's why I said last time we can't just say W is equal to constant. So to simplify the equations further, I will set a new variable u to be the derivative of v with respect to zeta. So I write everything in terms of u. So now we have u is equal to dv d zeta. Then if I look at equation 1 prime, you're going to see that on the right-hand side, the second derivative of v with respect to zeta is going to be a u prime, right? So this becomes basically c dv d zeta is equal to f of v minus w, and then I have plus this. W, we said it's 0, so I can simplify this. And then overall this, if I start denoting now the prime with the derivative with respect to zeta, it's basically this is equal to f of v plus u prime. But this thing is exactly u, so I can just write this is equal to u. Correct? Do you have any questions so far? Okay. So basically, if I want to write the full system of equations, I have this and also that. So then our phase plane system is given by u is v prime. And then I also have this. So I can rearrange this and write u prime is equal to cu minus f of v. So this is now cu minus f of v. And so that you remember where now prime denotes the zeta of that. Is that fine? Okay, so when we were looking at these FitzHugh-Nagumo equations last time, because of the way we knew that the phase plane analysis was looking from the space clamp case, we said that we can use the explicit FitzHugh-Nagumo equations and write this as a cubic function, right? So specifically, we wrote that this f of v is the following function. So I wrote v, and then we have, let me remind myself, so it's v minus a, and then 1 minus v. So this is from last class, where a is between 0 and 1. Okay, so I think we finished with this thing last time. So I wrote that the fixed points for this case, it's where you have this is equal to 0, so u is equal to 0. Once I know that u is equal to 0, I plug it in here. And I have also this is equal to 0. So it's basically the zeros of f of v. That will be the other equilibria. So the fixed points are u is equal to 0, and then v is equal to 0, a, and 1. Okay, so these are equilibria. And they are the zeros of f of v with u is equal to 0. Okay, so if I am to draw this in the plane of u versus v, I have basically a function that looks like this. This is a, this is 1, this is 0. And then I will just denote some new points. So I will denote this as point A. And this will be part of the wave profile that we will look at the end. So A and B. So if I want to find the null cline in this plane, how do we find null clines? We said the derivative is equal to 0, right? So if I set this thing equal to 0, I'm going to get that u is equal to f of v divided by c, where c is the wave speed, correct? So this thing here is the null cline, and I know it's going to be u is equal to 1 over c f of v. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, great. All right, so after this point, you can basically determine, once you have these equilibrium points, what their stability is. And the way you find usually the stability of something is by using a linearization, right? You write this linearization matrix, you evaluate at the equilibria points, right? And then once you have that, you can determine if it's a saddle point, if it's an unstable node, and so on. And then you can basically do a phase portrait analysis and see what's happening. And this is what we will do today. So if you do this linear stability analysis, you will find that these 2 points, so v is equal to 0 and 1, are saddles. And the point v is equal to a is instead an unstable node. Okay, so basically once I have this, what we are interested in is we are interested in finding the trajectory in the phase plane that takes us from point A to point B. Takes us from v is equal to 0 to v is equal to 1. And these are fixed points. And I think I need to replace this marker because you can't see. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, so if you remember in the space clamped case where we didn't have the dependence on the space, so this is, I'm gonna make a note here from before. I hope you remember this. I had drawn, so this was u versus v, and I had something like this. And then I told you that if you start at some point over here, for instance, so not at the equilibrium, you're gonna go on this curve fast, right? Then we said you're gonna come along this null cline, you're gonna reach the top point slowly, and you're gonna jump after there, right, on this curve fast again, and then you're gonna go back to the equilibrium point, right? We have seen this in the past. So this is like a slow phase, fast phase, slow and fast. So this is similar, but now basically what we are saying is that if you make this assumption that you have a traveling wave solution of that form, there is only one specific wave speed, little c, that would take us from the saddle point v is equal to 0 to v equals to 1. And it will become clear when I draw it, but basically we'll have this like phase portrait with unstable nodes and saddles, that there will be only one trajectory from 0 to 1 that will be successful. And if I'm a bit off of that, I'm gonna fly to infinity. Okay? Okay, so this is what we have. There is only one value of the wave speed c, that's little c, that achieves this. And how do I figure out this? So we have to remember these two equations. So if I have that now, basically I can look in the phase plane of u versus v. If I do the following, this is going to give me like a gradient or derivative of that, right, in that phase plane. So the way you figure this out is by doing this. These are derivatives with respect to zeta. So I just plug in the formulas from there, and I get this is u, sorry, it's c u minus f of v divided by, and then this was the definition of u. So we have c minus f of v divided by u. Okay? But you know exactly again, so maybe let me get a different color. I know what f of v is. So with, you remember f of v was v, and then I had v minus a, 1 minus v, this cubic. So if I look at what is happening at v is equal to 0, what is f of v at 0? It's just 0. So I'm going to have just c. And c is positive for us, right? We chose that. So this is equal to c. Thus, the gradient of the trajectory is c. Any questions? Okay, so let's go ahead and draw these phase portraits that I was talking about. So now I'm working in the space of u versus v. And I will draw the three equilibria. So I have v is equal to 0, a which is some number between 0 and 1, and 1 as well. And we know, so I will do it live in front of you so that you know how to figure it out. I know that 0 and 1 are saddle points, correct? So saddle points, you remember how they look? It's like something like this, right? In the phase portrait, depending on what this is. Yeah, this is going to be out, say, this is in, right? So if I want to draw these 2 points, basically, I can do the following. And this will be some inward. And then I also have these 2. This is going to be a saddle again. And then I have that A is an unstable node. You don't need to complete the whole picture. So if we know these things that I just mentioned, again, let me just write, this is a saddle. This is an unstable node. And then I also have that this point over here, v is equal to 1, is a saddle. Okay, so what I am claiming here is that there is only one curve that will take me from v is equal to 0 to v is equal to 1. Okay, so there is some curve that joins these 2 points. And by selecting the c appropriately, this wave speed, I can go from here to here without flying off to infinity. If I don't choose my c appropriately, I might end up in one of the other trajectories, and I will not go where I want. So if you complete this picture, basically you have a bunch of other trajectories. This is flying off to infinity. Then if, I don't know, I can make another one. This, for instance, is another one. And you see how the picture will be completed, I hope, if I didn't draw this horribly. Okay, so basically what we are after is the blue curve that takes us from the point v equals to 0 to v is equal to 1. Okay, so this is like basically a shooting problem. This is how C is selected. And it means that there is a unique wave speed for the traveling wave. For the yes.
Feasibility, okay, or maybe negative.
Yeah, but we will not consider for now. Yes, we can. When I will do the other 3 regions of behavior that I promise, at the end we will draw the profile and you will see why it doesn't. Okay, so from this now, I'm gonna go to the second region. So this is like a fast phase basically that takes us from 0 to 1. Now the next thing I will do is a slow phase. Once we land on the null cline that I mentioned a second ago, on the U null cline, and remember that was from setting U prime is equal to 0, so I knew that U is equal to f of v divided by the wave speed. We slowly move on this null cline. So also remember that I set U is equal to dv in this zeta. So this is the same as writing v prime is equal to f of v divided by c. So I can go in the original 2 equations that I had written, and basically what we have, I'm talking about that equation over there, is going to give me the following. So this is the equation we had. Now I'm gonna substitute. This is the same as having c v prime is equal to f of v. So I will use this because I'm on the null cline. So this is f of v. And I have f of v minus w plus epsilon squared v double prime. So what I'm saying is that to leading order in epsilon, I know that w is approximately f of v, right? We have this. But remember, we also have the second equation from our system, which is the cw prime. So this I will now call equation 1. We also have, I should have brought better markers, I'm sorry. So cw this is equal to, and then I had gamma v minus w. So this is equation 2 from before. Okay, so how do we make now progress with this? Basically, what we have is we are on the null cline. Remember, we are on that curve. So this takes us up the curve u is equal to f of v divided by c until I reach the other null cline now, where w prime is equal to 0, so w is equal to gamma v, until we reach w is equal to gamma v, which is the equilibrium of 2. Okay? So we were on the UV plane. We reached the point by choosing correctly our wave speed. And now that we are on that point, I'm saying that once you are on that null line, you're slowly moving until you reach the equilibrium of the other WV plane now. Okay, it's a bit confusing, but once we draw it, and if you read a bit more about it, hopefully it makes sense. But it's the most difficult part of the course. So if this makes sense, perfect. Okay, so now we have reached this point. So the picture that you should have in mind is that we are now in the WV plane. And the way this looks is the following. So I have this. This is basically now this. So W is around f of v. This was the point A that we had from before. This is point B. And what I'm saying is that you start here now at point B. This is where we ended up before on the null line. And we are going to travel again above this point. But we're not going to go all the way up as before. Instead, we are going to stop at some other value, which is WC. So this is some value WC. And how do someone could have asked me now, how do you know that it's again this cubic? So we know it because it's basically, I know W is equal to f of v, and f of v was just that cubic function for v. Remember, this was v, again, v minus a, 1 minus v. That's how I know the shape is like that. OK, so what I'm saying is that here we cannot go all the way up. And we are now in the third dimension. And the reason is that we will again together try to figure out what this should be. There is again a unique value of WC that we should have, such that we are again landing on the correct trajectory. Otherwise, we again fly off to infinity. So just like before we chose the C appropriately, now we have to choose this WC, and it's the only value that will allow us to end up where we need. OK, so the picture is like this. Now I will attempt to draw U, V, and W all together. So what you have is this. I have my original. How does this work? When I did this, it was faint. Anyway, it's a different course, I guess. It's like this. So now I have U, V, and I had, where is the picture? So this was my UV plane, right? And I was trying to choose C such that we are on this blue curve, right? So if I now draw the blue curve, we chose now our C, we said. We ended up from 0 to 1. And now have some third dimension W. So let me do this. Just imagine it into the board. This is my plane, it's flat, okay? So I have like something like this. Does this make sense, what I'm saying? So it's like a 3D thing, and the WV plane is flat into the board. And what I'm saying is that there is now some curve like this. And it's this one. We are in the WV plane. And I went first. This is my point A. I landed on point B. And I'm now in the other plane. I'm going like this. And I'm going to reach some value WC. But I'm not going to go all the way up. And this point is point C. It's not the wave speed, it's a point. OK, so what does this mean? Why does it not go up, and how do we choose it? maybe I should eventually switch to blue, but for now, let me do this. So now that C is not the maximum of the curve f of v is equal to w, unlike in the space clamped case. When I'm talking about space clamped case, I mean the one where you don't have spatial dependence for the v, it's just the time one that we originally looked at. Okay, so now the point C is where we have the W null-Klein, which is exactly where W is equal to gamma V. And we need to find what this value of WC is. And this is exactly what I will do in the next stage. So that's region number 3. So once you reach this place right now, we will have another fast phase. Once we reach this point, we enter another fast phase. And I will do again a rescaling because I am in this phase. Again, rescale. So I'm going to rescale the xi variable again as epsilon zeta. To capture this fast phase. But this time, bless you, I'm going to have that the W is set to WC, which is the number I'm trying to find. And it's going to be a non-zero constant. So that's what we have for W now. So this is a non-zero constant. So the system then is basically CV prime, and again the prime is the zeta after I have done the rescaling, where again if I give you something like this, now it means d zeta. Do you understand how to get this? This is just saying is what we did before by the rescaling. I have f of v, but I know this is WC, right? That's all I've done. This is WC now, whereas before we set it to 0. Is that clear? Okay, so once we have now this, the advantage of having it is that we can return to a phase plane, turn it into a phase plane by writing it as a first order system. And because we have already done this, you know how to do it. The trick is to just let u is equal to v prime. And that makes it basically, so I have this, and then I substitute here, I get u prime from this term over here is equal to cv prime, which is u, minus f of v plus wc. Is that fine? Excellent. Okay, so once we have this, now we can do phase plane analysis again. So what do we do in the phase plane analysis? We look at the null-Kleins. Again, this null-Klein, the v null-Klein is just, I just know it's 0, right? If I plug in there 0, what do I get? This is just a shifted version of the one before, correct? Previously, what did we have? We just had this. and we found that the null cline is u is equal to f of v divided by c. Now, since I have this additional thing, it's just going to be a shifted down version. Okay, so let me draw that. So going back into the UV plane again. We end up with something quite similar. And that something that is similar is basically this picture. So now I have U, V again. And the picture is instead, I said, a shifted version. So it's again the cubic, but instead of passing through 0, it's going to look like this. Right, before it was like that, and I just shifted it down. So this is now U is equal to f of v minus WC divided by C. So, okay, in case you're wondering how did we get this, so null cline is U prime is equal to 0. So I have this minus f of v plus WC is equal to 0. Therefore, U is equal to f of v divided by C. So this was what I denoted earlier as my point C. And now I'm trying to choose the WC so that I end up at point D. And point D is exactly this one. This is another equilibrium point. So there is only one trajectory that will take me from point C to point D. And this is another fast phase. This was, again, it was that unstable node from before. These are saddle points. So this is an unstable node. This is another equilibrium point. Okay, so this is the same curve as before, but shifted down.
How does that work? Because when you have u dash is 0, it must be horizontal. And that green curve doesn't.
Okay, perfect. I will make the whole drawing with this now.
Okay.
So basically what I'm saying is this. So I've done this, right? Then I've gone up to here. And then there is another one that comes here. It brings me to a point that is now here. And then I need to return back to the equilibrium. So I need to find a fourth phase that looks like this. You see? Yes, exactly. So this is the picture. Wish me good luck. Now I'm going to make it all if my market works. So it's this. So your classmate is asking the right thing, how can I do this? But I have now U, V. I already went from point A, which was at V is equal to 0. I went quickly like this. Maybe I should make it with the same color, sorry, so that it's not confusing. This is my blue curve from that board. So this is point B. And then I use the red to do that one. Now I'm in the other plane. So this is my W plane. And I go up to here, which is point C. And then I'm going to make a new curve now. This is the one we just figured out. Okay, this takes me here. This is point D now. And I have to have another slice that takes me back to A. And this is C. So you go like this, fast, slow, fast, slow. Okay, so the 4 pieces are A to B. This is fast. Then I go from B to C, it's slow. C to D is fast. And then finally D to A is slow. Okay, so basically this stage here is the fourth. Finally, a slow phase takes us back to A again. On the VW plane. So now we are ready, because we have all the pieces of this in this three-dimensional thing. We can draw the whole traveling wave that propagates along our axon. But I will look at a different profile now. It will not be U, W, and V. Instead, I will look at V, the voltage, how it changes as a function of space. So how does it move down the axon, basically? So, and we will use information from this to draw that profile. So now I have the spatial coordinate just x and the voltage V. And remember that I said that my choice of C was such that I travel from right to left. So I will draw a profile, and that will mean that that profile of the wave will just propagate down the axon from that direction to this. Okay, so I start at point A. What is the voltage at A? What is its value? It's V is equal to 0, right? And I have some, so it's A is here, it's on the right. So I'm saying that the V of A is just 0, that's why I drew it on the axis. Now I go fast from A to B. What was that point? What was the V there? It was 1, right? So I know I will travel it up, because V is 1 here. So let's say it's around 1. So I have this. So I'm gonna draw a line like that. This is point B. Now I go from B to C. C is this slow phase. C is almost at 1 as well, right, in terms of V. It's a bit above 1. So I will basically come slowly up to a point C here. So I'm going like that. And then I have, this doesn't really have a direction, it's just so that I show you how I plot this profile. Now from C, I go to D. What is the V there? It's some negative number, right? So it means that if I draw this in the Vx direction, it's gonna be a fast phase that takes me to some negative value of V. So this is D now. And how do I draw now the last point? So D, I go back to A. What is V there? 0, exactly. So I have to just come back. Basically, you draw a... So this is back to A. I mean, it's not so sharp here. You should just, it's just me drawing it. So this is the profile of V of x. So this means I have this kind of wave, and it will propagate because it also changes with time. Okay, and this travels, I know exactly. So this is C, by the way, the point. I know that it travels with some wave speed C. Okay, so recall here, if you are wondering why it's moving in that direction, we chose the xc variable is equal to ct minus x with c greater than 0. So this basically tells us now, this is exactly the same as the space clamp version, but in this case, we didn't have a spatial wave. In that case, the wave train would be a time trace, whereas this one is moving along the axon. It was a lot, I know, but hopefully when you read it again and then you ask me next class if you have anything that didn't make sense, you will feel comfortable with it. Do you have any questions right now for me? Because after I finish, yes? No, not, this was just to draw the phase plane. This is just an axis. It doesn't have a shape. It's just like me drawing this. It's like if I did X, Y, and Z like this. Sorry if the picture is bad. Okay, so this basically concludes this FitzHugh-Nagumo. What I will do next, and I have a few minutes to start it, is calcium dynamics. So calcium dynamics, basically, now what we did is to explain how our brain can send a signal to the muscles, right? And how this wave will propagate. But then once it arrives there, you need to have some way of telling your muscles, now do something, right? Okay, so basically the way that the muscles will be able to take this signal and do something with it is by doing this like calcium release, okay? So basically if you do this with your muscles, say, it will contract and it will release this thing, the calcium basically. So what we will be able to model here is how to model the calcium release. Okay, so this is chapter 4. And it's calcium dynamics. Calcium, the way you write it is 2+. Is important in muscle dynamics and cell signaling. So what we have is that the calcium is stored in our cells in bones, and it's released by hormonal stimulation. And there is something called, I hope I said it correctly, it sounds like a Latin name. So the internal store is called sarcoplasmic reticulum. Okay, and then we also have that this releases calcium via basically what is a process called calcium-induced release. Okay, and finally for today, I will give you another definition. In this sarcoplasmic reticulum, we also have an intracellular called the sarcoplasm. And basically what you have, if you want to see the picture, is basically, and I will do it next time. This is the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and there is also the sarcoplasm here. And you will have basically some concentration of your calcium inside. some concentration out, and then there will be active releases of calcium in and out of this cell. But we will do this next time because you already had a lot of information thrown at you. Thanks.